Hello, it's Philip Taylor from Richmond Green Chambers speaking. I'm looking at another book in the series of books covering mental health legislation. There's been a lot of confusion about mental health, and I teach the subject for the Distance Learning Partnership. And I've been having some problems finding the suitable book for my learners, because I have a range of people who are involved with mental health issues, and I'm always interested to see what's on the market. Now, we've got this book here, which is Mental Health Mental Health Act Manual, 11th edition by Richard Jones. It's a heavy work. You can see how heavy it is. Purple cover. That's the Flickr reference that I've given, and the review. It's 1,000 pages long. There's a bit of blurb on the back. 1,000 pages long. It's got the usual stuff from Sweet and Maxwell, which is the standard huge amount of cases at the front. Then you've got the nice paragraph numbers, which is always very helpful to assist when looking. But you've got a huge amount of legislation in here and commentaries, and it's refreshing to see what's actually in it. Then towards the back you've got, again, various statutory provisions. Then you go into delegated legislation. Then there are codes of practice, which obviously are coming in at the moment. A little bit more about that in a minute. Then right at the back there's a very detailed index, and as I say, a heavy book, but we welcome Jones in this particular edition. This is what I've said about it, because I've reviewed a number of books from their competitors. This is from Sweet and Maxwell. I've given it the title, A Critical Guide to the Mental Health Act for Medical and Legal Professionals, because that's really who it's addressed at. And obviously I'm dealing with those people who are actually coming to me for specific mental health law experience, and also some understanding of where we are today with the confusing legislation. In the 11th edition, what Jones has done is he explains the impact of the Mental Health Act 2007. Remember, some of you may know it was called the Mental Health Amendment Act at one stage. We just call it the MHA now, which is much easier. And of course the previous 1983 Act. Information, of course, is also going to be provided on the new rules and regulations we have that have arisen from the 2007 Act, providing all the professional will really need to have when it comes to implementing and advising on mental health law issues. So with unrivaled annotation from Jones, what we've got here is an essential tool for any professional working in this field, and it's relatively straightforward, although the law, as you know, is a mess. And we've got a huge amount of stuff which I have reviewed elsewhere in this area. Now, unlike the legislation itself, which in Jones's view, of course, which he expresses in the preference, is complex and challenging. That's a generous expression. The book's designed to be accessible both to the medical and the legal professions, and is written in as straightforward a style as is practical, considering the gravity of the subject matter. It's a difficult area. Interestingly, the author refers to the fact that the Mental Capacity Act, that's the earlier Act, the MCA, is amended by the 2007 Act, which we know, quote, to provide for a procedure that can be used to authorise the deprivation of liberty of a mentally incapacitated person. He criticises, he being Jones, criticises the legislation on a number of grounds, among them length, complexity and poor drafting. We'd all agree with that because of the difficulties, certainly I find, in teaching the subject. Furthermore, the relationship between the MHA and the MCA is, in Jones' opinion, far from clear, as I've certainly found out, the reason being that the two acts, he says, had different sponsoring government departments and pursued different policy agendas, one being capacity-based and the other focused on risk. Well, I'll leave you to work out which department comes under which head. By legislating for parallel legislative regimes, he says, Parliament has created a recipe for confusion which will inevitably result in a lack of consistent practice throughout England and Wales. And that, of course, is what I think a lot of people, certainly in the House of Lords, were worried about. Bearing these sobering thoughts in mind, therefore, it seems this legislation is in a parlous state, and therefore it's reassuring that this volume here, this nice purple volume, provides so clear a guide to the MHA 1983 as it then was, because that's the consolidated substantial law, and then it explains the impact of the 2007 Act on the 83 Act by detailing how each section of the Act has been affected. Obviously new provisions have been incorporated from the 1983 Act, and they're fully covered, such as a replacement of the role of the responsible medical officer with that of the responsible clinician. Now there are a few updates in the 11th edition which are worth considering. First of all, it's the abolition of the current 4 separate categories of mental disorder and the introduction of a single simplified definition of mental disorder that applies throughout the Act. That, of course, is to be welcomed. There's the introduction of supervised treatment in the community, which will be available for patients following an initial period of detention and treatment in hospital. Again, remember the arguments that we're going to and fro on this. Then there's the requirement that appropriate medical treatment must be available if patients are to be subject to detention or to the new regime of supervised community treatment. And finally, of course, there's an important area, again covered in the 11th edition, a requirement that those performing functions under the Act have regard to the new Code of Practice published under Section 118 of the Act, which includes a statement of principles to inform decisions taken under the Act. Now, the codes of practice are coming in, and in fact I have a number of books concerning the codes, which I'm going to be reviewing separately. The problem we've had is trying to work out what's going to happen, but based on the material available to the author as at July, this edition, this is actually July last year, 2008, this edition contains a stop press which is included to note the effect of the new MHA approved clinician general directions order, which will be obviously reproduced in a supplement that's going to come out next year. In fact, that's now 2009, which is where we are today. Obviously that also is going to link in with the codes of practice as they come in. So what Jones gives here is his critical guide with the clarity that we need as professionals in this sensitive and difficult area of law. Obviously it's the 11th edition. Thank you very much for it. I think it's a great edition for us too. Thank you very much. Bye bye.